Hey guys, what's up? Yeah, I am recording this Christmas night, so it's been a very busy weekend. I got 20 titles to talk about, so I'm going to be a little bit more brief with some of the titles. Anyways, if your boy Mrparka's off, he's exhausted. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. Excuse King, back in full. We're going to start this off with some of the Shaw Brothers collection here. This is the, Shawscope, and this is volume 1. There's probably going to be more, which is awesome. Now, I did not watch all 12 movies from this set yet. I'm probably going to break this up in chunks. I watched the first 4, so they're going to be like, this will be done over 3 weeks. Next week, I might skip the Shaw Brothers and do like some other movies and everything like that, just because, you know, you don't want to get all kung fu'd out, because that could very well happen, I know. So far, I'll break down these titles a little bit, but as a whole, I thought this set was is actually pretty good. Every title in here I enjoyed so far out of the first 4, and I'm not sure if I like the layout 100%. I like how it looks. I like how it unfolds. Everything's very cool, but it's just kind of going to be hard to, when you go to put it on the shelf, it's going to be like one of those Godzilla Criterions or one of those Gamera or Herschel Lewis serial set. You're going to be like, I don't know how to store this. So I guess we're gonna. It's kind of lays out like this with the 8 disc, I believe, in here, 10 disc, and the last 2 are CDs. But the first film in the collection is King Boxer. Yeah, and this is also known as Fist of Fury, which I think a lot of people will know that title because it's got the infamous kind of like the crazy red fist and the sound music cues that were used later, I'm sure, in Quentin Tarantino movies and probably a dozen other Shaw Brother movies. But King Boxer, it does share a lot of similarities to the Chinese Boxer, another Shaw Brothers film, but this one, it feels almost like 2 films in one. All these run times on these movies, like I had seen a handful of Shaw Brothers movies and enjoyed all the martial arts, so when I said, I was like, I don't remember the run times being particularly long, but this one was like an hour and 40 minutes, 49 minutes. I was like, oh, this is kind of a beefy kind of runtime for this kind of, you know, B-movie stuff here. And I don't mean that as an insult. I love B-movies. So we have King Boxer. So this is kind of like your classical kind of Shaw Brothers film where we have somebody kind of learning, like they're training to be in this tournament and everything like that. And at first, this guy, he's not quite as good as he should be. So his master sends him to learn from another master, and he's kind of on the bottom rung, and he builds himself up to eventually kind of be given this special teaching where he's going to learn this Iron Fist kind of technique move. And he's learning all this to be like part of this major tournament. So their like kind of school can be the you know, the top of the heap, the be like crowned the best. So of course there is someone within the school that doesn't like this, and then there's a bunch of baddies. And like the Chinese Boxer, the baddies hire these outsourced guys, these Japanese guys, to come in and kind of ruin some things. So it's up to the hero to kind of face off against all these other people. And what I noticed about this one the most is how ruthless it is when it comes to people being killed. There's a lot of kind of like a lot of characters involved. There's a huge love story at the same time, or you know, the character has you know, a love from home, that like his old master's daughter and everything, and they're kind of destined to be together. And there's also this singer who's interested in him. So it's like a really kind of epic, complicated deal. And by the end of it, there's so many characters, and they all kind of have their ends, and it's actually pretty satisfying. And the Iron Fist technique is pretty awesome, punching through like, you know, wooden piers and all that kind of stuff like that. So this one, it started off pretty interesting, and it felt like 3 movies in one. We had the love story, we had the training montage, and the revenge school aspects at each other's throats, the schools and everything. And then we had the tournament, which I love seeing the tournament at the very end. But as far as special features are concerned, we have the brand new commentary by David Dresser, co-editor of the Cinema of Hong Kong and the Journal of Japanese and Korean Cinema. Newly filmed appreciation by film critic and historian Tony Raines, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be in throughout a lot of this set. He's on all 4. He's on the first 4 movies, talking about them quite a bit. It's the interview with director Chung Chang-Hwa, filmed in 2003 and 2004 by Frederick Amaswin. I'm terrible with names. This is a very a name I've never seen pronounced out loud. Then we have interview with star Wang Ping, filmed in 2007. Interview with Korean cinema expert Chow Young Jung, author of the Chow Chang-Hwa Man of Action, filmed in 2005. And then we have Cinema Hong Kong, Kung Fu, the first in a 3-part documentary on Shaw Brothers' place series within the martial arts genre produced by Celestial Pictures in 2003, featuring interviews with Jackie Chan, Jet Li, John Woo, Sammo Hung, Gordon Liu, Lau Kar Ling, Chang Pew Pew, and David Chang, and many others. So that has they started that. That's pretty interesting. It has a bunch of people, and it has the alternate openings of Five Fingers of Death. So I believe that is the alternate name. Did I say that, or did I say Fist of Fury was the alternate name? Five Fingers of Death. These movies have a lot of multiple names, and they all sound similar. So also they have a lot of the same similar actors that pop up in the Shaw Brothers movies. This one of the lead in this, I believe he pops up in Chinese Boxer as well. Like even the main bad Japanese guy in this one is the main bad Japanese guy in Chinese Boxer. So he kind of shoehorned that in. But I was just amazed at the end carnage on this one, how many characters were in here, and I was like, this movie doesn't spare anybody. But entertaining one, good stuff. A lot of cool deaths at the end. I'm always hyped by the end of these movies. They always deliver the goods. So that is King Boxer. Okay, the next one's in the Shawscope set is the Boxer from Shantung. And I'm going to say this here. This is the longest one of the four, but it also happens to be my favorite of the four that I watched for this. So this one is kind of a get rich, rags to riches story here, where we have this stranger coming to town, and him and his best friend, he calls him brother. You know, I don't know if that's a sign of just like their friendship or actual siblings in this case. So originally, right off the bat, he meets Tang. And this is kind of guy who runs this place. He is cocky, and he kind of is like one of the two kind of crime bosses that runs everything. And right away, the main character sees him, interacts with him, and says, well, I'm going to be as big as you. I'm going to be your equal. I'm not going to work for you, yada, yada, yada. And this guy is a master at Kung Fu. So he starts to build himself up slowly, having some fights with some goons. And before long, he's actually being paid dues from the people's business as protection. And he becomes like one of the top dogs. And it's kind of like a story about greed and, not turning into that thing that, that was there before and all that kind of stuff. And there's like a love story angle. But it kind of builds up with all these bad guys. There's these people called the four champions, and you only see like three of them throughout the entire movie. But there is a fourth one. He's like the main bad guy's personal bodyguard, and there are so many cool bad guys in this movie. Like he has all these run-ins with these three champions throughout the four champions throughout the entire movie, and like there's a lot of comedy bits because it's a big epic. It's like 2 hours for a kung fu movie. That's pretty epic, okay? But he breaks this guy's arm a couple times, and it just becomes like this comedy thing. And there's also this great scene where he goes on stage, and there's that kind of carnival aspect where they have this like big imported European guy, and they're like, anybody that can knock him over gets $20. It's 20 cents to enter, kind of deal. And of course, nobody can knock this monstrosity over, but our champion's gonna have a go at it too, which I absolutely loved. Anyways, there's these lots of giant fight scenes where he takes on whole groups of people, and he starts to kind of like build up his own men and starts to get his own territory and everything like that, like a rags to riches story, kind of like Scarface or something. But the whole thing ends in this amazing sequence inside this restaurant where everybody is a bad guy. And I don't want to spoil this, but every single character that he's been fighting throughout the entire movie ends up being there, and it turns into the most ridiculous, over-the-top, amazing bloodbath fight kung fu scene I've ever seen. I was so hyped throughout this entire thing, and I'm a sucker for like building all these characters up and having tons of bad guys and characters throughout the entire movie, and then at the very end there's just like an onslaught and a bunch of people die that you recognize. I'm like, this is so exciting, I'm so excited, and I was just so hyped for this. I was so happy, literally, and it ends in like this almost kind of really nihilistic, insane way. Anyways, just an excellent kung fu movie with a good message, and I enjoyed the main character and everything like that. It worked really well, and at first you see the runtime for this, and you're like, oh, I don't know, seems a bit long, but by the end of it, I was so invested. I love this one. The Boxer from Shantung, great stuff. As far as the special features are concerned, this disc is on by itself as well. It has okay, so we have interview with Chang Chung Tao, filmed in 2007. Interview with assistant director John Woo. Yeah, that's right. John fucking Woo worked on this movie. Filmed in 2004. Interview with star David Chang, filmed in 2003. Conversation between stars Chen Kao Tao and Ku Fang, filmed at the Shaw Brothers Reunion in 2007. And then we have Hong Kong and German theatrical trailers plus TV spot. So very cool. Also really like that artwork on this one. That one's pretty cool. Enjoy it. I mean, it looks a little bit more modern than you would think for the Shaw Brothers stuff. But anyways, that was a great movie. I really love that one. My favorite of the four that I watched so far. Okay, the next one I'm going to cover is the 5 Shaolin Masters. I want to make sure. That one's this one over here, and these are both by the same director actually. So yeah, this one was kind of like a chase deal going on where we have these five Shaolin guys. They're kind of like the last of their types. They're kind of ridiculed, and you know, the changeovers of powers, everything. So they're being chased down by these baddies, and they're constantly on the run. And everywhere they go, like anybody that helps them is picked off and everything. And it's like they're trying to like kind of start this, you know, I would say kind of like a rebel kind of thing against these people or whatever. So it kind of goes down to the point where all these characters, they're facing off against this group of bad guys, and they all have a special talent. So they all have to learn their amazing special talent and everything like that. And yeah, so there's a lot of training montages where they all have to figure the baddies' weaknesses and all the characters like that. This one was probably my least favorite of the four that I watched, but it was still fun, still interesting, still good stuff. And the ending is also great. Like, all these movies deliver a great ending that you'll remember, so you always have a good like taste left in your mouth at the very end. But I like how they kind of establish the characters, and they're mostly just through their like it's like a lot of training and a lot of different kind of weapon techniques. And I'm a sucker for like kind of how like the Street Fighter movies will do it too. They'll introduce these bad guys that all have their own like fighting technique, and they somehow establish them very well, which is very little kind of character development. Maybe just by the weapon they use and how they move and their style is enough to kind of incorporate who their character is. I'll also cover at the same time the Shaolin Temple, which came out like 4 years later or 2 years later from this one. It's 76. Has the same director as well. And I thought this one was pretty cool. And it's like this last, they kind of go together, these two. It's like the last strong point in this area. Like the Emperor wants them all gone, kind of taken over. They don't want any threats in the area. And there's this Shaolin Temple where they teach martial artists, but they're not accepting any new kind of, you know, martial artists to learn anything unless somebody can really prove themselves. So in the very beginning, we have like these three individuals sitting outside for days and days waiting to be accepted inside this temple. And eventually they're put in, and they're put into like menial jobs, and like you're going to be the cook, you're going to be like the librarian, and all this kind of menial jobs, and they're just kind of confused by what they're doing to them, but they don't realize that throughout this they're also learning a great base for their martial arts. More people come, of course, and we're introduced to about, I would say, like there's like 12 kind of characters, 12 major martial artist characters besides the teachers as well, and they kind of all you learn kind of the setup of the school. But of course there's a traitor in here that's kind of reporting to the Emperor and everything like that, and they're not liking what they're hearing, so they're going to try to close this temple down, right, and take care of everything. So there's going to be a giant battle at the end, but all the new students have learned their fighting techniques, and there's going to be a giant standoff here, where I like this because the fighting and everything, they're like running room to room, and it's like half the movie is like a big battle scene, like 30 minutes of running in room to room, kind of going back and forth. And yeah, there's a lot of comedy bits with the training, of course. Like the guy finally learns how to jump with the 60-pound weights, and he's great at it. Then all of a sudden they add the 120-pound weights, and he's like, oh. But yeah, it's all set up really nice. And I do like both those last two, kind of like the Shaolin Monk movie ones, because like all these movies are not scared to kill their main characters. They're not scared to kill anyone. And a lot of characters that are established that you kind of grown fond of, they are killed. And you do feel those kills in the movie. But yeah, I enjoyed the Shaolin Temple a little bit more than the five Shaolin Masters. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a newly filmed appreciation by Chang Cho, film critic and historian Tony Raines, and he points out some interesting stuff. He points out that the director had some, like, he was a closeted homosexual at points or something like that, not directly outward, and some of the stuff in the film seems a little bit more kind of like you can kind of sense it, a lot of shirtless guys and a lot of weird kind of internal injuries around the rectum and stuff like that, and I found that kind of weird and strange in the film. And then we have an interview with star Kung Du, filmed in 2003. Elegant Trails, David Chang, a featurette and actor produced by Celestial Pictures, and there's also one of those with Tai Lung. And then we have alternate standard definition version of Shaolin Temple, and alternate opening credits for 5 Masters of Death, the U.S. version of 5 Shaolin Masters. So yeah, we got quite a bit. I'm looking forward to checking out more of these sets, of course. And there's also a very cool booklet. I meant more of these films in this set. Yeah, so just lots of cool stuff in here. It's that's the one bad thing about these sets is when you want to talk about them and cover them, you're like, you never do them justice. I can never do these justice because you want to get to them in a timely manner of their release so people know about them and everything before they sell out. But then you're like, I just can't watch 12 movies that quick. But anyways, I'm enjoying my journey so far with this, and I think it's a really cool set. And the Shaw Brothers and Asian films for a long time was something I neglected until probably about like 8 years ago. I started getting into more Asian films, and I've loved The Journey, so many great Asian horror films. But I've still missed out on a lot of the Kung Fu films and the Shaw Brothers films. I've seen some, but now I'm going to definitely see more, and I'll seek out as many as I can get that are released on the Blu-ray and new formats and everything like that. Great stuff. I know I've seen that there some of the horror titles are coming out too, so I'm very excited about that. I'm glad 88 Films is putting some out in the States as well. So yeah, that is the first part of the Shawscope review. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. Next week we probably won't have any Shaw Brothers, but the week after that will for sure. Yeah. Okay, now I have a bunch of 2021 watches for you. I'm going to kind of breeze through some of these because I don't have all that much to say about a lot of the 2021 movies. And I'm also catching up, for the year-end list. So the first one is one that's on Netflix. This is called Blood Red Sky. And I know I sound like a dick here when I always talk about runtimes. Like, Dave, I have ADHD, okay? But then if it's a great movie, I never even notice the runtime. The Shaw Brothers movies, after about 20 minutes you're into it, I don't really worry about the runtimes. So I look at Blood Red Sky on Netflix, and I was kind of like, this one sounds really interesting. It sounds really fun. I've heard mixed things about it. So I start it, and I see the runtime is 2 hours and 3 minutes. I'm like, okay, whatever. Let's see this. And so I don't know. A lot of people say go completely blind in this one. So if you don't want any spoilers about it, go ahead and skip ahead. But if you see like the poster art and everything like that, you'll know exactly what's kind of going on here. But I feel like this movie would be more effective if you did, not know anything about it. So I would say it's worth a slight recommend. So if you want to check that out, and I think a lot of people will really enjoy it before I get into slight spoilers and then probably furthermore some more spoilers. So, okay, so Blood Red Sky follows a story of a single mother who seems to be struggling from some sort of ailment. She's taking her son on a plane ride, and throughout the middle of the plane ride, we're kind of getting glimpses of her past and realizes what kind of disease or what she's suffering from. We kind of get glimpses of that. And about 5 or 6 terrorists decide to take the plane over. And they're led by Dominic Purcell, who is in Prison Break, and among other things, I think he's in. Is he in Blade 3? Does he play Dracula in Blade 3? I want to say he does. Yeah, so he's kind of the lead terrorist. So we have kind of like a Area 51 thing going on, or Air Force One, Delta Force style thing. But it's more in the vein of a Die Hard, where we have a group of international terrorists. The standout terrorist is this. He's posed as like a steward on the plane, and he's just like this really kind of flamboyant, aggressive, kind of crazy guy. And I thought he was really fun. But yeah, there's just a few of them here and there. They all have their own different character traits, and a lot of the people on the plane have their own character traits too, and everything. I mean, like everybody, but they like set out throughout the entire movie. You get a little bit more here and there. You have the asshole guy. You have a couple assholes actually. Then you have like this foreign guy who befriends the kid in the very beginning. And the way the film structure set up, they kind of make you think that he might be involved with something, because it opens up with a scene where the plane has landed, and obviously we're going to do a flashback from that. And there's like some military guys, we got to keep this whatever in the plane, yada yada yada. Come to find out is these terrorists are planning on something awful. It's not good, of course. And this mother has a secret ailment, and she's a vampire. So you're like, oh shit, this is gonna be pretty cool. We got a vampire versus terrorist on a plane, and that kind of feels like the plot. But then we go back to the military plot too, and then before long, the terrorists really don't seem to matter. We have more of a snakes on a plane style thing, or a From Dusk Till Dawn siege narratives, Night of the Living Dead with vampires and all that kind of stuff. And the film just feels like it has so many different plot lines going on at the same time. It feels like it's just going on forever. Every once in a while I'd like, let me just click to see how long, and I would have like 45 minutes or 30 minutes, and like every time I felt like the movie's going to end in 10. It just goes on for way too long. It feels like there's way too many things going on here, or endings too. It just didn't know when to end, and it just kept going on and on. Although a lot of the effects and a lot of the stuff is cool and effective, and it almost is epic at a point, it drug on to no end. And I said pacing and runtime are the worst things that happen. For the streaming has ruined pacing and runtime, if that makes any sense, and I really feel that way. But anyways, I thought this was a good film that could have been great. It was just a little bit of a letdown due to its pacing, its runtime. It just, a lot of stuff needed to be trimmed out of here, to be honest. But as Blood Red Sky had some cool stuff, it just wasn't 100% a winner for me. So, but I would say give it a spin. Maybe check out the trailer, maybe watch the first 10 minutes, see if you're digging it. Okay, the next one I rented on Amazon Prime, and this is Bloody Hell. I had heard mixed things about this one as well. It's another 2021 movie. So what we have here is this guy who seems to have not necessarily a split personality. It's not that, but he communicates with himself in a comedic way, almost like a id and a super ego, whichever ones you guys have, where whatever it's called, where you talk to your devil on the shoulder type deal here. So he kind of has that. At the very beginning of this film, he's trying to pick up the desk clerk at the bank, and there's this kind of bank robbery, and what he does is something pretty dramatic. You don't necessarily see everything, but he was trying to be a vigilante kind of hero style, and something went wrong, and he ended up getting imprisoned for 8 years. Anyways, he gets out of prison, and he decides to take kind of a trip to Sweden. Everybody knows who he is. They're pointing at him, they're laughing at him, they're whispering about him, all sorts of crazy things. Some people think he's a hero, some people think he's a monster, of course. And during the entire movie, he's talking to himself, having these rage fits of what he kind of wants to do. So anyways, long story short, he is abducted by a crazy cannibal family that's going to feed him to another member of their family. And one of the people of that family, a young girl, kind of shows interest in him. Maybe she's not like them. And that's kind of the plot. A lot of this film, he's tied up, talking to himself with one leg. That's kind of where we're at here. The last 25 minutes of this movie are really entertaining, really fun, good action stuff, violent, gory. But it's trying to be it's comedy, of course. It's a comedy horror film, and it kind of goes down to how much you like the main character. He's a good actor. He does a good performance. It's just I don't find him very funny. It's probably his writing, probably his jokes. It's very subjective, humor, and it's just not very funny to me. I didn't really laugh once. But when we get to the action horror stuff, I thought that was really well done. Really cool, really entertaining. But besides that, the humor all didn't land for me. I didn't think it was very funny. As far as you kind of get the main reveal of what happened at the bank as well too towards the end, and you kind of nothing is it's kind of exactly what you would expect to happen with a character like this. But Bloody Hell, it's up to you. I think it's good, not great as well. Probably in the same boat as Blood Red Sky. Okay, the next one is Bloodthirsty from 2021, and this is on Shudder. I believe it was made in 2020, but it was just released this year. So this is a Canadian joint. This is kind of a, I don't want to say coming of age. It's one of these stories where we have the singer who's working on her sophomore album. She's having a lot of trouble, and she decides to go with like a new producer, and this producer's kind of sinister and starts to reveal some more about herself, her inner kind of demon, her inner monster, and all that kind of stuff. Think of When Animals Dream or Raw or something like that, but kind of a little bit different. This movie moves at a snail's pace for me. I thought the best parts were actually the music that she was singing. I thought was interesting and decent, and I just lost interest almost within 20 minutes of this one. It just didn't do much for me. It just needed a little bit more than what it is. I've seen this movie done 5 or 6 times before in recent years, and I think they're all a little bit stronger. When Animals Dream, I do. Raw, I think so, of course. But it's just not anything necessarily. And the special effects, they're not bad, but they're very kind of minimum. I will say minimum, maybe focus on more of a realistic aspect to it. But I do like the idea of kind of embracing yourself through music or whatever, and that kind of, discovering your creative side and also your bestial side and all that stuff. But yeah, Bloodthirsty, not necessarily something I enjoyed. I thought it was a little too slow, maybe a little too predictable, maybe a little too old hat for me. But not a poorly made film, just something that I wouldn't really give a wholehearted recommend to do. Yeah. So that's on Shudder if you want to check it out. Okay, the next one here is Jakob's Wife, and this is by Travis Stevens, who did The Girl on the Third Floor, I think, a couple years back. This stars Larry Fessenden and Barbara Crampton. Very excited to see those two in here. Enjoy both of them. I love Larry Fessenden as an actor. I think he's great. And Barbara Crampton has had a renaissance in like the last 10 years. She was great in the 80s, but she's doing a good job now too. So yeah, it's nice seeing that middle-aged characters are kind of like almost seniors, like 60 years old, are the lead characters in this freaking movie. I love that. So also the title is obvious reference to something like Jack's Wife, which is an AK title to Season of the Witch by George Romero. So I like that kind of idea that that's Jack's wife, that women don't have an identity after they're married and stuff like that. So I think that's really kind of interesting, kind of fun play on the name. So Barbara Crampton is married to Jack. Jacob, and he's a preacher. So he kind of like at times will talk over. They do this really great scene where they're being questioned by a police officer about a missing girl who was killed by a vampire secret, and basically what happens is like he talks over, and you're like, oh, you understand this relationship right away without even coming out and saying it. So it's kind of set up right away. One day, Barbara Crampton is showing the Old Flame this kind of property to buy. I think she's a realtor or something like that. And the Old Flame is actually the actor from Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Weird Science. The friend, I can't think of his actor name, but he's pretty good in this too. He's got a nice little good role in here. And she shows him to this factory, and she kind of has a moment of weakness. But before they can even act on this, she kind of is like, we shouldn't do this. And then like there's a vampire attack, and she's kind of bitten, and she's starting to go through all these changes, and it's like this relationship thing with her and her husband, and he wants to kind of slay the vampire. It's really funny. It has some really great moments, including a teeth whitening scene, which I thought was very fun, very cute. There's a good small town feel to it, which I enjoyed. The sheriff has got a lot of great dialogue. I like his demeanor. I like his interactions with Larry Fezzendat and all that stuff and everything like that. The vampire kind of works as like a Stephen King style vampire, where it starts to slowly kind of pick and corrupt the town and pick people up. Also a female vampire that looks kind of creepy, which was unique. You don't typically see that, like a kind of decrepit looking female vampire. I don't know if I've seen too many of those, so that was nice. Anyways, I thought this was a fun, cute, entertaining movie, and I really enjoyed it. So that's Jacob's Wife. Check it out. Very fun. Oh, I know it's going to be an awkward pause, but I got to mention, it's pretty fucking gory. There's lots of good gore, lots of over-the-top gore, so check it out. Good stuff. Okay, the next one from 2021 is Slaxx, and I think this is on Shudder as well. And this is a bizarre film about, consumerism and stuff, and buying that, that horrible product where it was used by obviously, third world labor and kids being in fields and just being worked and all sorts of terrible things happening to them. But hey, they say it's friendly to buy, and it's whatever. It's the hottest fashion, so you gotta have it. So this follows this young girl. It's like got to be one of her first jobs, and she's very excited to work at this kind of like Abercrombie and Fitch kind of style store in the mall where they're like debuting these new jeans, and she's very excited about it. It's her first job. She's got like the stars in her eyes. You guys know your first job, you're like, they took advantage of you so bad, right? You go there and they're like, oh yeah, I'll do that, I'll clean the bathrooms, yada yada yada. But then after you're like sixth job, you're like, I ain't cleaning shit. But yeah, so anyways, she's very wide-eyed and happy to be there, and she kind of learns right away that this place, we learn as the audience through her eyes that this place sucks. Everybody's miserable. The manager is a complete douchebag, wants to get ahead, doesn't care about anybody. Nobody cares about anybody. Everybody's cutthroat and rude and annoying and all that kind of stuff. So what we learn is that there is a killer pair of jeans in here, similar to there was that one that came out a couple years ago called Bad Hair, about the killer, the weave, and then we also had stuff like Rubber with the killer tire. So we have a lot of inanimate objects or pieces that appendages go on your body or clothing that are going to kill you. So that's kind of the plot here. At first, the jeans start to pick people off. It's very gory. People's hands get ripped off. They crush them. Very fun in the beginning. A lot of people getting killed in gnarly ways. They use security footage cameras in an interesting kind of cute way where you see the jeans moving by themselves, which is very funny. But by the third act, I just was kind of bored with the whole thing. You kind of know exactly where it's going, and it kind of just traps itself in a corner of kind of mediocrity where that's kind of deal here. I feel like these movies are a little bit more fun when you don't explain it, or you lightly explain what the hell's going on. When you give the whole backstory, it's just like, I figured something like that would happen, but the idea that you're diving so deep into it, I know it's a message, but still, the message would still be there without the without diving into the backstory too much, Anyways, I just felt like about the third act, I was losing steam on it, and the kills weren't as fun, and it just didn't do very much for me after that. When it plays more like a silly slasher film, not that I do like the message, but the message is there without, the third act or not, I think. So anyway, Slaxx starts off great, ends up just good. I would still check it out. It's a lot of fun to be had, and it's some pretty good gory stuff too. Okay, the next one is from Hulu, 2021 movie, and this is The Vigil. So this one kind of focuses on the Jewish faith. There's not too many horror movies that do that, so you got to give it props for that. At the very least, you'll get a kind of a glimpse into some of the kind of different ways that religious practice death and everything like that. So basically, this main character here has gone through some real trauma. You think that he had something, something very tragic happen to him. You kind of know he seems to be suffering from post-traumatic post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and he is approached by a rabbi after kind of having like this, like it seems like a meeting to kind of like relax and get back to normal and everything. He's approached by a rabbi that says, "Hey, I need you to basically watch over this dead body and pray for it." That's a typical thing that I guess people of the Jewish faith will do when someone dies. The first couple of nights, somebody will stay with the body and pray with it as to not let evil spirits attack it. So he doesn't want to do it at first because he obviously had some problems and he just doesn't want to have anything to do with this life anymore. But this rabbi convinces him for $400 cash because he's kind of short on money to do it. So he agrees. He goes to this house. It was an older man who passed away. He meets the wife of this older man in the house. She doesn't think he's up for it. She seems to be suffering from dementia to a certain extent. And throughout the night, some strange things start to happen. You know, shadows in the background, and some genuinely really creepy things happen. One of which is a cell phone call, which was scary as hell. Of course, you see kind of like the idea of something with a backwards head. He watches some of the video footage that the husband had, and it appears that there was something wrong, something following him through his life. So it gets really complicated. And of course, throughout this, we're going to see the trauma that happened to him, kind of similar to the trauma that happened in Blood Red Sky. We're having a lot of these kind of movies where there's an initial like thing, and you know something's wrong with this person. And as the film progresses, we see the tragedy that happened to them, the reveal. And that's a very typical story kind of structure, and it works usually, and it works in the Vigil. So like I like the Vigil enough that I was genuinely, it is kind of your typical kind of scary ghost story, but it does do a couple things differently, but it does a couple things really well, which makes it a little bit better than a lot of those typical ghost stories for sure. Like I said, there's genuinely a couple scares that are creepy. The lead actor's performance is solid. He's likable, and I like the idea and I like the setup. I think it's well worth your time, and it's really creepy. Along with the Night House, I would say that these are kind of the best scary kind of house movies that I've seen so far this year. So yeah, check it out. Good stuff. Okay, this next one is super bizarre, and this is called The Scary of 61st, and I believe you can rent this on Apple right now. On yeah, I think it just came out Friday. If you're interested, it is a super bizarre film. Yeah, so I was pretty sure this was a kind of a dark comedy, and it's really weird and bizarre. It's shot on film, which automatically gives it some props and some points for sure. So what happens is we have this young couple that are going to college, and they're going to move into this this bungalow, this kind of apartment. They got a great deal on it. And it just they're kind of confused why they got the great deal. Both these girls seem to be kind of separating a little bit in terms of, you know, one's more needy, one's more possessive, and she's like comes from a rich family. One comes from more of a poor family, kind of more independent. So they have like kind of a butting of heads there. So one day this kind of strange girl comes in and she says she's there with like that meter bullshit, whatever she's coming in for to look at the house. But right away she gets in there and she says this house was actually, kind of a apartment building for Jeffrey Epstein, where he used to keep young girls here and come and screw and all that kind of stuff. And right away you're like, oh, this is like such a weird thing to be so topical and so right on the nose, right? And like I'm like, oh, this has got to be like it's played as like this dark comedy where the dialogue is very silly and very funny at times and a little bit over the top. But as it progresses, these two girls form a friendship and they start to fall down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, and you know how people can be with that. And like we have these oddball characters like the rich girl's boyfriend being there and he's kind of being a douchebag and all that kind of stuff. And before long, the rich girl starts to get this weird kind of possession, and there's these awkward scenes of sex with her and her boyfriend where she's being taken over by this young girl, and it just gets really uncomfortable and weird. But also it always keeps its darkly comedic kind of tone, and I felt like that was kind of funny. And it gets a little ridiculous, and it's like this kind of forced topical exploitation, like horror, dark comedy weirdness. But at the end of the day, I kind of enjoyed it. I laughed quite a bit, and I thought that the humor worked really well in kind of a sick way. It's a super fucking weird movie. A lot of people hate it. I think that there's a director is like a influencer of some sort. I'm not familiar with her, but as far as her film's concerned, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty fun. This was definitely dividing the audience. People either love it or hate it. I liked it. I thought it was pretty entertaining. It's so weird, so goofy, strange stuff. Okay, this next one is fucking bonkers. I should put this. I'm gonna in the category. I'm gonna regret this, because this is some things that happen. So every once in a while, I'll be on Facebook and somebody will say, "I'm looking for people to review my movie," and somebody will tag me, and then the person sometimes will contact me. So I got a message from Bill Cate, and he said, "Would you be interested in checking out my movies?" I said, "Well, yeah." So I asked him a little bit about them. He said they're experimental, they're crazy, they're weird, they're extreme. I was like, you know what? I can get down on some of that. Sometimes I love that stuff. Sometimes I hate that stuff. But I can always kind of try to approach it at a acceptable kind of way, and try to judge it for what it is. And so, anyways, this one showed up, Kano Vision. And it has 3 shorts on here: Smudge, Positive Life, and Our Falls. Those are all really highly experimental and like altered footage to make very look bizarre. And it's just kind of like weird, kind of trippy eye stuff that I couldn't gauge too much on. But Kano Vision is about an hour and 8-minute movie. And I don't even know where to go about this thing. It is weird. And like you read the descriptions online and you're like, I'm glad you're telling me that. And it's about a suppressed kind of serial killer that's like hates his life and he's trying to change his sexual mentality through all sorts of things like that. So I wish this movie would have been played more straight instead of the experimental state, because with the experimental we get a lot of repetitive actions, which are kind of its intent. Like we'll have this character in the basement covered in blood with like pig guts and animal guts and having like sex with the another male, but it's mostly just them like rolling around in like pig guts with like a cock ring on. And I was just like, I don't know if I can get down on this one. Like, I am a fan of August Underground and August Underground Penance, but Mortem's too much for me. And this one might have been a little too much for me. And the repetitive nature of him, the character, kind of just going down and like you're seeing these like pig guts and like pig head and rolling of blood on each other and rolling around. It's disturbing and it's gross and it's weird and it's effective in being gross. Like, I don't know much else to say about that. But then we'll kind of go to these weird kind of like fetish stuff for people wrapped up in plastic, which I mean is probably some of the murder stuff or implements of murder, but also it can play as like a fetish. I know that some people do the plastic kind of asphyxiation stuff. I think so. I just according to films for me. But I remember the movie Heartless had something to do with that in there as well, where the character said something along those lines and asphyxiation. You could see that. But it gets really repetitive, but I did like the very ending. I thought the very ending was kind of effective because we go out from the nasty, dirty basement and we're actually on these like side railroad tracks, and we're kind of seeing this violent act happen. I don't want to spoil too much, but it does it multiple times, different, pretty much almost similar takes, but different takes of just somebody being murdered on this mattress on the middle of nowhere in the like it looks like a industrial part of town, and like railroad tracks are there, and I thought that was effective. As a whole, though, I don't know if I can really give this any recommend or any gauge or what the hell I could say about it too much. Like I can't rate something like this. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not something I would kind of go back and watch, to be honest. Although I do like some experimental movies, like what was that movie, Day of Dreaming Purple, or not? No, that it was like the Day of the Purple Sun. And there was like in 2 parts. It was a very long film. It was very strange, very bizarre, and I would put that in line with something like this. Although I feel like that one was even less inept than this. This, you get the glimpse of it, the gist of it, but it keeps being repetitive and doing the same thing over and over. I can probably post a link where you can purchase this one if you're into extreme kind of gross films like this and insane stuff, kind of experimental films. Then I would maybe give it a slight recommend, but I can't personally say I was a fan of it or anything like that. That's Kano Vision. Okay. Now we're going to hop into those 1994 movies.
Prison officials say Dahmer's head may have been bashed against a wall.
A day of last-minute appeals failed to stop the execution of America's most notorious mass murderer, John Wayne Gacy.
Throughout, Chikatilo presented himself as a wretched victim of nature's indifference.
Satan approves.
Reality! What do you know about reality?
Handling CNN cable television
It's not a Solitaire story. This is not reality. Not reality. Not reality.
This is reality.
Not reality.
The delusion of a disordered mind, a phantom, a spirit, a ghost.
Look, he hasn't got any relatives, and the coma he's in is irreversible. Give me a signature and I'll pull the plug now.
Fuck off.
Save us!
Okay, the first one up is Possessed by the Night from 1994, of course, and this is directed by Fred Olen Ray. That is right. So, the first thing I want to say before I forget, there is a scene of Chad McQueen, that's right, son of Steve McQueen, beating up Jim Wynorski, Cole S. McKay, and Orville from the Slaughterhouse, what is those movies? Sorority House Massacre 2? Beating them up because he is a debt collector, and he goes in a mechanic shop. That is the most ridiculous scene. It's just like very funny to see Wynorski, Cole S. McKay, and Orville from the fucking Sorority House Massacre movies get beat up. Anyways, this is a super bizarre movie. I don't know where to go about this. Who is the heartthrob, like the 90s kind of like sex like pod in this one? Is it like Shannon Tweed or somebody like that? I can't remember her name, but she's in a bunch of these 90s movies. Also, besides having Chad McQueen in here, we also have Ted Pryor from the David Pryor movies, of course. Henry Silva, who you gotta love. And Silvio. No, not Silvio. Sorry. Who's the guy from Goodfellas? Carbine, the guy with the low hairline who's always like, hey, I wasn't making. He's in here as well. So we got some familiar faces. Anyways, Chad McQueen is a debt collector, and he goes to collect something from this strange Chinese man. And instead of taking like the money, he gives him this fetus in a jar. The fetus in the jar has some sort of weird control over him. The same thing happens with Ted Pryor, who is a writer, and he has writer's block, so he ends up finding this weird other fetus in a jar. And what happens is this fetus starts to kind of manipulate him and his wife, and this secretary has moved in to help him speed up his writing because his boss or whatever is in debt, and he owes Henry Silva money, so that's why Chad McQueen's involved, because he's going to collect. And I'll just call him Carbine, I think is his name from Goodfellas. He basically is sleazy and owes the money. So it's complicated nonsense. Ted Pryor ends up, of course, screwing the secretary in a hot, sexy scene. He also has sex scenes with his wife because this is the 90s, sexy thriller. But instead, what would make it better? Fred Olen Ray's thinking, let's add a fucking baby in a jar with telepathy. And I'm like, that would make it better. And I don't know why there's a bunch of movies with a baby in a jar with some sort of telekinetic or telepathic powers. Think the Miami Connection had it. There's a couple of the other ones, like Evil Dead Trap, that baby has like weird powers. It's just like babies with weird powers is its own weird subgenre, and I just don't know why it's a thing. The Unborn 2 also came out this year. Very funny that we have all these weird baby or pregnancy horrors, Aswang. I just don't know. But anyways, Possessed by the Night. It's a 90s sex thriller deal, but it does have a ridiculous shootout at the end with a bunch of dead bodies. Ted Pryor chewing the scenery. Henry Silva's really funny, and I gotta like him. Chad McQueen is doing his best Michael Madsen impersonation I've ever seen. He feels like Michael Madsen. Anyways, Fred Olen Ray does inject some fun to this one, honestly. And it was made the same year he helped produce the Biohazard, the Alien Force, and so it has some of that stuff too. It definitely it has a bigger budget than that one. I did enjoy it to a certain extent. It's fun, goofy 90s sex thriller with a telepathic baby in a jar. Or fetus, whatever the fuck it is. Don't ask me. Okay, the next one from 1994 you can actually watch on the AGFA release of Scary Tales, I believe. And this is Darkest Soul from 1994. This is an SOV. This is dirt fucking cheap. And so Jeremy sees part of this while I'm watching it, and he's like, and right away I noticed that he's like, what's up with like the Chris Farley and Tom Savini thing going on here? And I started laughing hysterically right away. Like, it's two kind of guys that are just kind of like losers. They can't keep a job. And the Tom Savini style guy is basically like kind of leading them. He's just kind of an asshole. And the Chris Farley guy is kind of a little bit more soft-hearted and easy, kind of like it's kind of just dim-witted deal as well. So as these kind of two loser guys that can never keep a job, and half the movie is them just getting fired from a couple different jobs, which I thought were very funny and entertaining. I'm going to tell you this right now. I could watch a whole movie of people just quitting jobs in hilarious circumstances, But anyways, just entertaining. And I for some reason, I'm going to say this now. this is like, it's got regional quality and it's got an endearing quality. And I did end up liking the Chris Farley character, probably because it reminds me of Chris Farley, probably, and I love Chris Farley. So it's like, yeah, like I like the Chris Farley guy, right? I'd probably spit a little bit there. I like the Chris Farley guy. I was spitting all over my room. Anyways, so yeah, they get a job as gravediggers, and the Savini one actually believes it's best to start stealing some of the products, the jewels from the bodies. They start making money, and the movie's over before it really gets started. It's not really a horror film. It just ends on a super dark note with suicide and a murder and an accidental murder and a hallucination. And it's just kind of a weird, strange, dark little slice of regional nonsense, SOV. But at the end of the day, I kind of enjoyed it. I have a soft spot for these kind of movies. So that's Darkest Soul. Yeah. Not too much to say about it. It's very short as well.
Sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. This young man will take your order.
I want a pound of ground beef, and I want it lean. This lean?
Well,
Is there a problem, ma'am?
Yes, I asked for lean ground beef, and this is what he brought back.
you call this lean ground beef, mister? Ma'am, I'm sorry for any inconvenience. I'll get you some lean ground beef. Now here's how you get lean ground beef.
Do it, and you're both out of a job.
You know something, Tommy? That job was stupid anyhow. Who wants to be stuck working a freezer box for 8 hours? Fuck you, man.
Okay, the next one from 1994 is Twisted Tales, and of course an anthology with a name like that. So this is basically 3 stories. The first one is about a compulsive liar. The second one is about a brother killing his own brother. And the third story is about a guy who has a few dark secrets. So the first story, the compulsive liar story is this guy goes out on a date. He's always bullshitting. He's always exaggerating. He gets jumped by one guy. He tells everyone, I got jumped by 2 guys and a guy with a baseball bat. It actually happens the next night, and he keeps progressing and progressing and progressing, so you can see where this story's kind of going to go. That's the problem with anthologies is you tell the plot and then like you go to talk about it and there's not really anything except that the plot is the plot is the twist and all in the same, so it's kind of spoiling. The second story has some interesting aspects about it. It takes place with a murder in the beginning. And like the cops and like the people in the apartment complex are kind of comedic. The one guy's like, I thought they were homos. It's like, yep, it is definitely the 90s. He's like, they were brothers. He's like, I don't know. He's like clearly not an actor. He's like, I thought they were homos. Like maybe that guy said it once and the director just thought it was so funny or so he just put it in like 5 times. Anyways, like the brother is haunted, kind of what he's done, and you could tell him and his brother didn't have a good relationship, but he ends up running away and finding like this strange kind of like hobo, and they start a kind of a weird relationship, while at the same time a strange psychic girl is trying to track him down with a cop, and there's a twist at the very end. This one was decent, effective, I guess, for that. And the final one is about a guy who seems to be suffering from what you think is one thing, but it's actually another thing, but then it's actually both things. And there's a twist at the very end. The special makeups aren't great on this one, but you could also read the title and you can get it. Basically, the description spoils everything. But of course, you know, a neighborhood girl's interested in him, but he can't do the relationship because he's a werewolf. He's also a vampire. Oh no. So yeah, I mean, it's a cheap, low budget anthology. It's not necessarily great. None of them really stand out. None of them knock your socks off. I guess the werewolf one is probably the best of the bunch, or maybe the shooting. None of them are horrible. Like, I wasn't mad at any of them or bored throughout any of them. It's just that none of them really pack that, anthology punch that you really need. None of them are too offensive either. That's just twisted tales. Not great, so.
Anybody tell me what happened here?
Well, I heard some shooting. Just one shot. I didn't call you guys, though.
I did. I heard the shot and I called.
Well, who lives here?
A couple of homos, I think. Yeah, a couple of guys. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Probably homos. They're always killing each other.
No, they were not. They were brothers.
I didn't know. I thought they were homos.
Okay, well, go back to your apartment, please.
Okay, the next one is, I believe, a Hong Kong flick. Not too much on this one. This is Devil of Love. And I believe it was shot in Taiwan, and it's a Hong Kong flick. This is a super fucking weird movie. So this starts off in the very beginning with some sort of like vampire creature. All these people are in like the jungle, and a lot of them are like making out and like swimming and everything. And then all of a sudden this like monster guy, he runs out and he kills all the men in quick, like record speed. Like 8 people are dead in like 3 minutes. He's like drowning them in there and he's killing them really fast. And then he kind of like takes the women back to his like lair and he rapes them, but it's not like filmed like a rape scene. It's filmed like a love scene where they're into it. It's really weird and bizarre. And then we kind of go to like fast forward to a different place, or go to a different geographical location for some whatever reason, and we're kind of being read this will where a brother and sister are finally shut up for this will, and there's a stepmother involved and the father had died. So basically all the kids are getting the money, and the stepmother's not getting anything but the house. She obviously doesn't like this. Turns out that she is dating the vampire guy who is screwing those women in the very beginning, and every person he screws or bites turns into a vampire, so he has like a legion of vampire women. It's really weird. So they obviously want to pick off, the kids so they can collect the money. I'm not making this shit up. And I know you guys are never going to be able to find this fucking movie. And if I don't know how to explain or talk about this movie without explaining how batshit crazy the plot is. Turns out the Hun is killed. This is only like 30 minutes into the movie. He goes to hell. He meets his father, who's sleeping around with women, or trying to in hell. Uncle Frank style or something like that. So anyways, he's sent back up to heaven to try to warn his sister about the vampire and his stepmom. So that doesn't happen. At the very end of the movie, it gets all crazy. It gets like the holy... what was that 1991 horror film, The Evil Dead versus the Holy Evil Dead or something like that, gets all whacked out like that, where they have help coming in to fight the vampire's original boss doesn't like the vampire now, so he's sending in help to help the dead son to fight the vampire and stop him. This is batshit. This is the kind of batshit kung fu nonsense at the very end. It's super weird. If you tell me what the hell's going on, I explained the best I could, and that's all I could tell you about the movie, because the picture quality is not great. The subtitles aren't great. I just seen a lot of weird vampire action and fighting and nudity and sex. There is a vampire orgy where he screws a bunch of the vampire women he's already bitten. So it's entertaining. It doesn't make a lot. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I can follow the plot to a certain extent with trouble. With trouble, I'll say. That is Devil of Love. Okay, the next one is another Hong Kong flick, and this is Hello, Who Is It? And this is a rape revenge movie from beyond the grave. Like Avenged, that one was beyond the grave. So Hello, Who Is It? You would never guess this as a Hong Kong rape revenge movie, but hell, I'm pretty sure every Hong Kong movie I've seen has rape and revenge in it, so there we go. Anyways, what happens is we have this prostitute with a heart of gold. She's taking care of her super sick mother and her dying son. She's trying to save money, similar to Romance of the Vampire, where the prostitute was trying to save money money for her eye surgery. So this prostitute is trying to save money to basically save her son in an operation. There's also a cop. There's kind of two storylines here. Who's a cop who's trying to date another cop at work, and it's just not working out and everything like that. He's also this prostitute girl's neighbor. So that's how they kind of tie it together. So one night, the creepy guy from Daughter of Darkness 1 and 2 and Underground Banker and Brother of Darkness and every other Hong Kong movie I've seen where they need a rapist comes in. Yeah, that's right. The guy in all those movies, the baddie in all those movies, pops up in this one, as you guessed it, the leader of a group of gang rapers. So basically, he picks up the prostitute for a night. They have sex, and he goes back and tells all his buddies. Him and his buddies, basically, his co-workers are working on the phone lines and everything like that. So he tells them this was the best ever. She had the biggest whatever, scumbags do to each. So they're all like, well, let's get her. We got to have her. So all four of these guys approach her on her way home from, visiting her kid in the hospital. And what happens is she doesn't want to do it, so they kidnap her. And while they're gang raping her, the police officer shows up because he knows these guys are just kind of no good. He doesn't really like them, and they decide to kind of throw her under some tarp, put some phone cable in her mouth, and they sit on her to keep her quiet. What happens is they suffocate her. She dies. She gets electrocuted. Not 100% sure what happened. And these four guys are like, we got to get rid of her, so they throw her underneath the work site and they cement her in. But what happens is she develops some strange electrical powers where she's like this ghost that can travel through the phone and make these crazy phone calls. So she starts to haunt them, and of course she's picking them all off in these weird kind of phone-related, phone-wired deaths. I'm not making this shit up, but it's pretty fun. It's pretty entertaining. And meanwhile, the cop is kind of like stopping in to take care of the crippled grandma, and is very confused by where the daughter is, and he's always bad-mouthing her, and he starts to find out what happened and uncover the case, and he's going to have to possibly help this ghost prostitute to avenge her death. Of course, the baddie here, he's pretty good in it. I'm going to be honest. This guy is either the biggest sleazebag I've ever seen in a movie. He's evil, but sometimes he'll have like a comedy side to him. And this one, he has a little bit of a comedy side. Like he's always kind of like, I don't know what happened. Like he's always trying to shut up one of the guys who's always like about to spill the beans and everything like that. There's of course a very touching moment between the ghost prostitute and the grandmother, and I like seeing that. And it's always these movies like they have this dark, nasty touch to them, like Underground Banker, and then like they'll have this really sad moment of like a burnt kid like crying, and you're just like, I'm like appalled by your exploitation methods, and then I'm laughing at the stupid silly slapstick shit, and then I'm like bawling my eyes out that you're like, there's such a weird mixture, and like I become really infatuated with the crazy Hong Kong movies. And Hello, Who Is It? I thought was really cool. I mean, it's not overly gory, but some of the death scenes are pretty cool. Like somebody's head gets decapitated with wire, somebody gets tied up in the wire, so they do some pretty cool elaborate kill scenes in the movie for it. And I love my rape revenge movies, even if it is a ghost prostitute kills people through phone wires. Good stuff. Hello, Who Is It? Okay, the last one from 1994 is Alone in the Night, and this is by the same director as Angel Guts Red Flash, which I really liked from 1994. I thought that was great. And this is more of a crime revenge film. I like the crime revenge films. I thought it might have an exploitation side to it, so as I checked it out, it doesn't. It's more of like a dark kind of drama, crime film, rape revenge style film. So what we have here is a great opening scene. We have this couple sitting here with it's an undercover cop and his girlfriend and husband and wife actually, and she's sitting here and he doesn't really know what she's doing, and she's playing with his gun, his pistol, and she's drawing like lipstick, a heart of lipstick or something on the pistol, and it's like showing that she's infatuated or has some sort of foreshadowing with this gun, which I really like. He sees that, gets very mad at her, takes it away, and she's like, I'm worried about yada yada. Of course she should be. Undercover cop, he is killed. She's very upset with the situation. That night she's raped by a group of thugs looking for drugs that are thought to be her husband's. He was maybe doing a double cross on the cops, playing both sides. They don't find the drugs. She's obviously disgusted and wants to commit suicide. She's saved, and then she tries to do it again, and she's saved by one of the other gang members that didn't commit the rape, that was involved, with that gang. And she's kind of confused by the whole situation. And it turns out that he possibly might feel sorry for. You're not 100% sure, but she decides to infiltrate the gang and become what they think is like some sort of prostitute, and she gets into the gang and she wants to plan a revenge and everything like that. So it's not as like elaborate like revenge or anything like that. It's not like out and out like shootouts or her killing a bunch of people. There's like a lot of like drama, and it jumps around a lot of times. Like, sometimes she'll be like, she'll go through a drug withdrawal, and there's like long scenes of that, but then we'll cut like 10 years, a couple years later down the line, not 10, but a couple years down the line. So it jumps around, and the final reveal I thought was really effective, really good. Visually, I like how it looks. A lot of, rain and dripping and kind of dark. I don't want to say neon because it's not very bright, but you got to get that kind of like gritty kind of rain, like, street light kind of feel to it. Anyways, I thought it was pretty good. It's called Alone in the Night. I would check this one out. Director's done a handful of cool films, or I feel like I've seen a couple more, and Angel Guts Red Flash, I would really recommend checking that one out. I really like that one from 94. So yeah. Okay, so the Patreon pick was from Dan the Cameraman, and he said, pick a movie where a comedic actor plays a serious role. So, although, I'm not as familiar with Jerry Lewis as I should be, I know of his comedic kind of roots and stuff like that, and I know he's mostly known as like a comedian and everything. So this is the king of comedy with Robert De Niro, Jerry Lewis, Sandra Bernhardt. It's directed by Martin Scorsese, one of the all-time greats, and it's a movie that I had never seen. So I was like, you know what? Every time I get a Patreon pick that's broad like that and I can pick, I'm always going to pick something that I really want to watch. So this is kind of a one-of-a-kind film. I've heard a lot about it for years. I knew that I would love it, but finally getting to sit down and watch it was kind of a treat. De Niro is a really strange actor. He tends to play so many characters that are just not exactly likable or good people, but they're always so interesting. There's a lot of scenes in this movie of Robert De Niro arguing with people, and I realize that's one of my favorite things ever. When he argues in Raging Bull with his wife all the time, especially at the end when he's not supposed to be back in the house and he does something. I love Robert De Niro arguing with people, whether it's Jackie Brown, Raging Bull, Casino, anything he's in. I love De Niro arguing with people. He's got such a sharp tongue. Mean Streets is great. Arguing. He's just such a dickhead, and I love him in these movies. Just his acting. So anyways, he plays Rupert Pumpkin with a Pupkin. Don't want to say that wrong. Pumpkin. So, because everybody throughout the movie is always mispronouncing it. It's kind of a gag throughout the movie. So, he is absolutely obsessed with Jerry Lewis. His name's Jerry Langford in this movie, though. So, he's obsessed with him. He's his idol. He wants to use him to kind of break through the scene and everything like that and become kind of a comedian, do the show, do everything that he does. So, this movie kind of follows around a couple people that are these kind of, obsessed with celebrity kind of people. One being Sandra Bernhardt, which is such an amazing performance, and her performance is scary and just manic and absolutely hilariously awesome and awkward. This is one of the most awkward movies I've ever seen performance-wise by De Niro and Bernhardt, and hilarious and touching and scary and endearing, and just there's a sense of truth to it where you kind of get behind it, where people that you like admired from a distance celebrity-wise, and you're just like, it's such an awkward situation in there. And like, anyways, it's always so hard for me to watch delusional characters like Robert De Niro in this film. But it starts off as him getting a conversation with Jerry Lewis in the car and everything. Jerry Lewis is so good in this one too. He's just, and you see a lot. And after that, it kind of just goes all over the place where he becomes obsessed and he keeps bothering him, showing up to places, and it escalates, of course. And it can only go one place. But I actually love where this thing ends. And it doesn't do what you would like a typical movie would do. When you like see De Niro get on stage, he doesn't bomb, not necessarily. Like, he's not great, but it's not the worst thing you've ever seen either. But it's just, how like Taxi Driver says a lot of that stuff, like those lost individuals that sometimes like, in a way they're like looked at as heroes or looked at as different. It's just kind of strange how sometimes the mental illness can be looked at and explored, and Scorsese does it in a really interesting way that a lot of people don't do, and I think he has a lot to say about it. And there's a lot of truth in the comedy and truth in it that you laugh because it's funny, you laugh because it's true. That's a De Niro quote from The Untouchables when he played Al Capone, not a Martin Scorsese Brian De Palma, but still you get the point. You laugh because it's funny, you laugh because it's true, and there's a lot of truth in this, and also there's a lot of comedy. It's the king of comedy, right? Anyways, yeah, and like the stuff with Jerry Lewis, like walking down the street is perfect. Like, kind of like you get the whole career of a famous person in like 35 seconds. Like at first, people are like, "Hey, Jerry," and he's like, "How's it going, man?" He's really polite and he's having fun and everybody's nice to him. And then like right away, like you start to see like a lot of people are being rude to him if he won't spend a lot of time with them, even if he's busy. And then by the end of it, he's just running for his life to get in there before some crazy grabs him. So it's just like, oh, you can kind of see that whole like life of a famous person within a span of 30 seconds right there. The good, the bad, and as you can see their whole career from starting out to the very, it's just kind of interesting. But yeah, it's just a wonderful movie, and the acting's great. You're rooting for De Niro, but you're not at the same time. I like how Jerry Lewis handles things with people. Like, he really handles it much better than a lot of people would. Maybe he should have been a little bit harsher. But anyways, I just thought it was great. And that moment where Sarah Bernhardt is talking to Jerry Lewis in the table with the candles lit, and he's like, "I just want to do something spontaneous." Like, that's got to be one of the best performances ever. Like, so mad. So, like, I didn't know what she was going to do next. And that's just a great little bit there. Anyways, I was very impressed with it. I was very happy with it. Of course, what else could you say? And it's a different performance from De Niro, man. It shows he's truly one of the masters of acting. Like, so hard to like he goes all out. Like, they're so different. Like, take his performance as Max Cady and as Rupert Pumpkin, and then just tell like that's the same guy. It's hard. I mean, those are like layered, weird performances. Like, and sometimes there's a little bits in there like Cape Fear where I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that part of the performance, but like if I buy it, but it's such a weird like swing, like always swinging, always diving into these performances, and he truly rarely disappoints. Anyways, I just thought it was a great movie. I and seeing it probably was pretty easy for Lewis to act like himself, to get some of that frustration out of it. You know what I mean? Of constantly, being the funny guy in front of the camera, and then just having to go about and be that funny guy all the fucking time for people. You know what I mean? Like, they always want you to perform. They always want you to be 100% be on for everybody, and half the time you're just like, I just want to go home. I just want to go to work. I just want to go to sleep. I just left the fuck alone. Like, you could feel that in there too. And he's always tries his best to be polite, but sometimes you just like, fuck off. Anyways, great movie. Really loved it. Would definitely maybe want to watch that with Jeremy, see what he thinks about it. He's not the biggest De Niro fan. I don't know why, but yeah. So anyways, that's the king of comedy. Loved it. Hey guys, we're here for Blindspot, because neither of us have seen this. I love how I just changed the rules when we want to watch something.
Wait, what's the rules?
Like, you ain't seen is I usually pick something for you that you ain't seen.
Mm-hmm.
When you pick something for yourself, it's Blindspot, because you ain't seen it. We both haven't seen it. If I'm picking something, so it's Blindspot. Mm-hmm. This is Mad Love from 1935. Same director as The Mummy. Actually, stars Peter Lorre, and I believe isn't the other male in this is actually Baron Frankenstein or Victor von Frankenstein, right? Clive something. I believe it is that actor, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this is kind of a classic story here. Was this based on a book? I can't remember.
I thought it was based off a book. I think it had some book stuff.
I believe so, because this has been ripped off a million frickin' times. It's the classic. Even happens in the Frankenstein films, like the brain is damaged. So essentially what happens is somebody needs a body part. They're given a part of a body part of someone who has died, who is bad, and it takes over their body, or that part of their body part. With a severed arm, body parts, The Simpsons parodied it with Snake with a hair transplant. So yeah, a bad piece of you takes over, a bad piece on you takes over you. And so essentially what we have here is Peter Lorre is pretty much a world-renowned surgeon. He's like the best. He is obsessed with this woman who performs at a theater. He goes and sees her every single night. Without miss. One day she tells him that this is my last performance, me and my husband, who's a world famous pianist. This lady is so lucky. Everybody loves her. Right. So they're traveling to France or Europe or somewhere, and they're going to kind of get married for a honeymoon and everything. She's not coming back. This pretty much devastates him. And anyways, what happens is on the train, there is a tragic accident where the pianist loses his hands. And among the cadavers is a murderer who was a knife thrower at a circus. And Peter Lorre is approached by the distraught bride-to-be to help her husband. And Peter Lorre does like a true mad scientist should. Not being able to fix the hands, he puts on the murderer's hands. Now the pianist cannot play, but only kill.
And it's not like it's a forethought. I can't think of the word. Premeditated. It's not like premeditated on Laurie's part. He doesn't like intentionally seek out.
I don't know.
Well,
His motives are never clear.
I mean, his motive
is to get the girl.
Ultimately, is to get the girl, but he's fine with the wax statue that he has in place.
I forgot about that aspect.
There's this whole wax statue thing
that used to sit in the theater before you could go see the play, and he actually bought the wax statue when they were closing down.
Right, but it isn't until the the hands start acting violent on their own after months of healing. It's Peter Lorre oh, I can use this to my advantage, and then starts framing the pianist into thinking that he killed his own father, and he'll get arrested, and then the woman will come to him.
There's a scene where you actually meet the killer, and he has this great interaction with somebody on the train. This person gets autographs. And it kind of shows you a glimpse of how it used to be to kind of be obsessed with just getting any celebrity because the guys at the page just signed something. So there's this great scene where somebody approaches him, and his demeanor, and you see him throw the knife. It's dead on.
It's a pen.
Yeah, he whips the pen into the wall. The scene when he's going to the gallows might be my favorite performance in the film. Just that little bit of, because he's basically in Paris, right? Because he killed his wife, and she was in a fit of rage, and he's going to the gallows, and he's like, "Tell me something, friend," because he sees an American reporter, and they go back and forth. He's like, "Is it true that they?" And it's his whole demeanor is so great. He's jovial, but obviously possibly dangerous, kind of classic killer, right? Like a Billy the Kid who could talk to the press and kind of charm his way to a certain extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the journalist that interviews the killer, he ends up becoming a third party, character. There's a few other characters in here. That Peter Lorre's housemaid, is just this drunk, lush old woman. And she has a handful of scenes she usually has this giant bird on her back.
Fucking bird.
There's one point where she gets so intoxicated. When the wife comes to visit Peter Lorre in the middle of the night, she sees her and thinks it's the wax statue.
Starts chasing after it.
Yeah, it's I gotta get you back in the room.
Lorre's got some real great scenes in here. One point he dresses up to a ridiculous level where he actually is acting like the knife thrower has come back to life, and the doctor put his head back on to try to manipulate the entire situation. And you're like, I don't know, I think the guy came back to life. I was like, are you crazy? That's such a Peter Lorre, obviously Peter Lorre. But that's kind of fun little gimmick in there. I feel like the movie starts off like a 5-star, but it loses a lot of steam, and it ends up good, but just not as great as it really could have been. I feel like it's missing a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, there's so much build up in the beginning parts, and then by the time they get to the ending, it's we kind of rode this train. We'll just try to end it, and it ends very abruptly. I feel
like a lot of the 30s films, they tended to end very abruptly. And being a director of The Mummy, it kind of makes sense. Even though I feel like The Mummy felt like it was never going to end as far as the Universal horror films are concerned.
Right. I'd never seen The Mummy. I always thought that Peter Lorre was in it, but I think I might be confusing.
He's not in The Mummy.
The director of The Mummy and, of Mad Love.
Did you want to read? Is it in this one? Yep.
Oh,
I bookmarked it for you. I completely forgot about it.
This says The Mad Butcher.
Just find it. You can read.
Mad Love. 3 out of 4 stars. 67 minutes long. Yeah, this is a short movie. Impressive version of Maurice Renard's The Hands of Orlok, this film's British title. Lorre is great in his first American role as bald, glow-eyed Dr. Gogol, a famous surgeon who replaces the mangled hands of pianist Orlok, Clive, with those of executed knife murderer Brophy in a bizarre plan to win the love of Orlok's actress's wife Drake. Slick MGM production values, creative direction, and photography. and the splendid cast make this a top-notch Mad Doctor flick, remade as The Hands of Orlok and Hands of a Stranger.
Yeah, I should mention that I believe there is a silent Hands of Orlok. That's what I was thinking. Orlok, like right when I saw that in the credits, remember I was like, oh, Orlok.
Yeah.
Orlok's been done a bunch of times. So we have John Stanley's Creature Features, Mad Love, 1935, 4 out of 5. Peter Lorre brilliantly conveys madness and compassion as Dr. Gogold in this excellent adaptation of Maurice Renard's Hands of Orlok. Same thing I said about yours. Screen scripted by John L. Ballerston and P.J. Wolfston. Those names sound like horror movie characters themselves. It's the classy story of how the hands of a murderer, recently guillotined, are grafted onto the wrist of a musical pianist whose own hands have been crushed in an accident. Laurie, the surgeon who has a fatal obsession for the lovely star of a Grand Guignol show in Paris, descends ever deeper into madness, yet retains a sense of pathetic. Carl Freud's direction is ahead of its time for atmosphere and camera angles. Ted Healy is intrusive as the comic relief reporter, but he does not interfere with the scenes between Laurie and the actress Frances Drake, or the pianist Colin Clive. Greg Tolan photographed it beautifully, and Dmitry Tumlikin wrote the score. Definitely a must-see. I think one of my favorite scenes is when Peter Lorre gets invited to the actress's going-away party, and it's that scene of complete awkwardness where he's like standing in the back like this, all bug-eyed, and he's like, did you want a kiss? Because they're all getting a kiss on the cheek, and he just goes for it, and he gives her like the whole thing, tongue and all, I think.
Well, and he had just pronounced his love to her like the scene prior, and there's like...
No one else knows how creepy he is.
Right, yeah. There's some neat stuff in this movie. The background architecture, has like just like a really like warped sense of perspective. Similar to, I think, to like either the Caligari or even some of like the 90s Burton stuff. Just like the sharp angles, like windows that look like coffins and trapezoids. So it's a neat, fun film to watch. Peter Lorre looks neat in it. He has a few different costumes that he gets to wear. I'd say, it does, I think, kind of like fizzle out in the end, but I'd give it like a 3.5.
I'm exactly the same way. 3.5, 7.5, somewhere around there.
Right. All the characters are fantastic. It's just, I think knowing the story and, seeing it done so many times, it's like, okay, we get it. And you pretty much call the story the moment it all happened.
Well, that's not the film's fault that everybody's seen 1,000 adaptations of it.
No, it's not the film's fault, but when all those thousands of adaptations, I think, tend to do it a bit more clever, it's kind of like...
I don't know if they do it any more clever, to be honest. I think all those are pretty obvious movies.
They are, yeah.
If you watch Body Parts, I mean, they have a lot of the same stuff in that, with the head tied on and everything, so... I mean, I'm just saying, like, the neck brace, they use that in Mad Love, too. Although it is fake, that it actually doesn't have his head attached to the neck brace.
Right.
And Body Parts, he actually does. Geez, what are we going to watch next week? I didn't really think of this. I'm new this week. I'm unprepared.
Oh, you're unprepared.
I could give you a couple choices.
Okay, I get to pick.
I'm going to give you 3.
Okay.
King of New York.
No.
Crash.
No.
Red to Kill.
God, I don't know what any of that stuff is.
Crash is a David Cronenberg movie with James Spader in it, who you watched in Wolf. King of New York is a Christopher Walken, a Bel Ferreira joint. That's right, I said joint.
Okay.
Lawrence Fishburne's also in it. Wesley Snipes.
I like Lawrence Fishburne. Let's go with, what is that, King of New York?
Yeah. And Red to Kill is the Cat 3 Hong Kong movie.
No Hong Kong. Red to Kill, or,
Red to Kill it is.
The New York one.
King of New York, okay. Yeah, it's got a great cast. It's. I think you'll like that one, to be honest.
I might.
If he doesn't, boo this man. We're done.
Bye.
Okay, let's get into these question answers, all that good stuff. A lot of these are repeats, so if it's the same, I'm not going to repeat it, because I asked basically 2 actors or actresses that you confuse with each other. So, Tempo Topus, thanks for the hard work you put into all your videos. I remember that back in May, you picked up a copy of Destruction Babies. Did you get a chance to watch it yet? No, I did not, unfortunately. If I do, I definitely will review it. Colin Morris, love Black Christmas. Find it very fascinating how close was it to Halloween, how close Halloween was to it. I've heard that Bob Clark had told Carpenter that if he ever did a sequel, he'd have Billy come back at Halloween. Then years later, Halloween was made. Now I know Carpenter was gun for hire in Halloween, but still, he could have taken ideas from Black Christmas, even though Carpenter denied it. I remember hearing that, and Carpenter always said that he never had that conversation with Bob Clark. Who knows? I mean, Ken Coakley, in the topic of confusing actors, the one you mentioned about Elias Cortez and Christopher Maloney was spot on. Another two I confused with each other was Neil McDonough and Paul Walker. They ended up in a film together, The Core, back in the 80s. Oh, then he is. Back in the 80s, Mickey Rourke and Bruce Willis looked alike. Before Willis did Die Hard, he was a TV star on a show called Moonlighting, and when a theater I worked at showed Angel Heart, people said he looks like the guy from Moonlighting. Yeah, I remember Moonlighting. One that is uncanny resonance is Anthony Michael Hall and character actor Terry Serpico. I first heard of Terry Serpico, or is it Surico? You spelled it two different ways there. When he was on Rescue Me, I thought it was Anthony Michael Hall. Serpico recently was on Cobra Kai. Once again, I thought it was Anthony Michael Hall because the show romanticizes the 80s with a great heaping of revisionist history. So it made sense for them to cast an 80s star. It ended up being Tony Serpico. Then he says, this is in regard to the Patreon pick comedy actors in dramatic role. Jim Carrey did a ton of dramas, but two that stick out were The Majestic, which was directed by Frank Darabont and featured a couple of actors from Walking Dead, Jeffrey DeMunn and my Hollywood crush, Larry Holden. Yeah, Jeffrey DeMunn is like in every Frank Darabont movie. I love the theme in the movie theater, bringing a community together. I believe that's still the case. It had other such themes, such as the hope that a man's son would come back from the war, as well as the McCarthy hearings. As a tidbit of info, Sean Joseph McCarthy was John Kennedy's mentor. Okay, Senator Joseph McCarthy. Another film he was in, a bit briefly, was Simon Birch, in which he played Joseph Mazzello's character as an adult. Quickly about Casablanca, which, in my opinion, has the most famous quotes. It had one of my favorite scenes in all movies, the scene where Victor Laszlo, Paul Henreid, drowns out the Nazis with the French national anthem. Conrad Veidt from The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in The Man Who Laughs plays the Nazi commander. Yeah, I knew that actor was in a couple movies. I just could not register him. Barnaby Collins here. Barnabas. Sorry, I always do that. Sorry, Dark Shadows, man. Laughing my ass off so good. I'm thinking of somebody else. You're thinking of Dick Clark. Yes, how'd you know? Because I know you. Actually, it was Clark Gable. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Confirming how well you know him. So funny, I was laughing out loud. Good stuff, guys. About like an Abbott Costello skit. Loved it. Have a Merry Christmas, you two. Thank you. You too. Uzi Suicide 666. Still waiting on the Folklore box set to be shipped. I'm sure with the mandatory 15 shipping on it, it will arrive here the same day it ships. Ha! It came pretty quick, actually. Isimisio, I still need to see Censor, and I do find myself enjoying most video nasties, even though most aren't that nasty. The Power started out good for me, but tanked halfway through. Say to where I appreciate it because it's a very personal film for the director, and anytime anyone puts that much blood, sweat, and tears into a project, I have to respect. Glad Jeremy finally watched Black Christmas. I picked Death Dream hands down as my fave Bob Clark film. Unpopular opinion, but love Death Dream. I hope you have a great Xmas holiday season. I think Death Dream is my favorite as well. Ice Ice Buoy. Been watching you since 2009 and every single video since then. I learned something new and interesting. Thanks for all the years of greatness. Happy holidays to you and yours, my friend. Thank you. Back at you. Burns. David Bruckner is remaking Hellraiser from the Hellbound novel. I really love The Night House. Is my best 2021s. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, Hellraiser. I'm already liking what I'm hearing so far. Jesse Bard, Tony Randall and Roddy McDowell. I can never tell both of them at the same time. Remember both of them at the same time. J.L. Warren, Tom Hardy, and Logan Marshall Green. Matthew Baldwin, Ernie Hudson, and Keith David. If they both have a mustache, I got to look for the gap in Keith's teeth. John Devlin, Paul Rudd and D.B. Sweeney, Rich Rabbit, Zoe Deschanel, and Katy Perry. Watson, there was a time, maybe 10 years back, when you could mistake one Javier Bardem for one Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Chris Sloan, Kurt Russell and Patrick Swayze, Ryan Reynolds and Ben Affleck, Jared Leto and Jake Gyllenhaal. William Adcock, Chris Sloan, my wife constantly confuses Kurt Russell and Patrick Swayze, glad she's not alone. Brandon Orlick, Morgan Fairchild and Morgan Freeman. We get it. Okay. Tim Walker, Charles Durning, and Brian Dennehy. That's a good one. Bill Casanelli, Keith David, and David Keith. John Soloway. Maybe he says if Keith David. Oh, he posted a little joke here. If David Keith and Keith David were to star together in a movie called David and Keith, where David Keith played Keith David and Keith David played David Keith, would the universe explode? Bill Casanelli thinking he's the joke man. Gary Oldman and Gary Coleman. Maybe by name, though. Sometimes that does happen. William Adcock, Walter Matthau, and Martin Landau. Justin Kosh, Dylan McDermott, and Dermot Mulroney. And that's going to pop up several times, and I will not be saying it every time. He says, my dad confused them too. He'd seen one on screen and call him by the other name. Bobby Morgan. Saturday Night Live did a game show parody based on the same premise. Sean Donahue, Bill Pullman, and Jeff Daniels. Edward Payson, Samara Weaving, and Margot Robbie. He says the Wolf Brothers. Margot Vintian, Vince Vaughn, and God. Mark Humphries, the actress in Ready or Not. Samara Weaving, and Margaret Robbie. Antonio Padilla, Dylan McDermott, Delmar Maroney, Jacqueline Junkier, Michael Cera, Jesse Eisenberg. They look so much alike to me. Rebecca Reinhardt, Ilsa Fisher, and Amy Adams. Peter England, he does Maloney Cotes. Kenneth McMillan and Charles Durning, also a very good one. Jenny Murray, Margaret Robbie, Samara Weaving. That one pops up a lot too. Jordan Benning, Tom Hardy, and Logan Green. That's big too. Allison Egan, every single one of the one I was thinking on here, except Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. Shaheen Barbarian, Willem Dafoe, and Chris Hemsworth, because they look so similar. JK, all the Baldwin brothers that are not Stephen or Alec. So you're talking about William and Daniel. I think Daniel looks a lot like Alec. Marcus Cook, the four other actresses who look like Margaret Robbie. Lacey Liu, we got Tom Hardy, Jeremy Renner. Virginia Shine, Jodie Foster and Helen Hunt, Sherman Hirsch, Joan, and Broderick Crawford, Steve and Butterfly McQueen, Andrew Chase Bledsoe, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Javier Bardem, Jonathan Knight, Wesley Snipes, and Bob Hoskins. Come on now. Jonathan Moody, Amy Schumer, and Rebel Wilson, Vincent Piranera, Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. Simpsons, they post a Bill Pullman joke here. Jeremiah Ball, when I was younger, Russell and Swayze, David Luton. Have James Parker and Italian horror legend George Eastman ever been in the same room? I think not. No, we haven't. Matt Jessel, Susan Sarandon, and Leslie Ann Warren. Angela Jane Negny. Yes, every time I watch Clue, I'm like, that's Susan Sarandon. She also says David Borgnese and Craig Schaefer. Connor Gorman Coffey, Jerry Bauman, and Stephen Tobolowsky, Jimmy Dempsey, Margaret Robbie, and the chick from Ready or Not, Mike Merriman, Miles Teller, Chris Marquette, and Dylan Trenholm. I don't know how to say your last name, Dylan. Trenholm. Barry Ellis. I used to get Amanda Peet and Lake Bell confused all the time. I've become a fan of Lake Bell, so I don't anymore, but I swore they were the same person for years. Gabrielle Jewett, Winona Ryder, and Rainbow Harvest. Carly Sonnefeld, Sigourney Weaver, and Susan Sarandon. Michael Fisher, Jeff Daniels, and David Coulier. Nathan Thomas Melander. Growing up, I mixed up Stephen Mott and Fred Ward. Me too. Also Stephen Dorff and Bradley Gregg, despite big age difference. And then Dylan McDermott and David Duchovny, George Siegel, Albert Finley. Guy who takes the desk look out in Die Hard, and Huey Lewis. Oh, you talk about the Texas guy. Coyle Vega, Huey Lewis. He basically, okay, so. All right, Thomas Filano. I know they look nothing alike. One is white and one is black, but I always confuse David Keith and Keith David. One was in The Thing as Childs, and the other has made many other films. Tracy Allen, me too. Michael Viers. Growing up, I got Patrick Swayze and Dennis Quaid confused a lot. Andrew Martin Hogston, David Keith David, Dan Carroll. Susan Sarandon totally looks like Leslie Ann Warren from Clue. Hayden Hall, Denise Richards, and Rebecca Gayhart. Matthew Hudson. As a kid, David Warner, Alan Rickman, and Charles Dance were essentially the same guy. As an adult, I know better, but when I was younger, not so much. Kit Kinsley, Sandra Bullock, and Julia Roberts. Got a lot. Everybody came in to answer on this one. Patrick Flynn, Margaret Robbie, and Jamie, I believe, is it Presley? I'm not sure. Jamal Potter, Patrick Flynn, yeah, but they same. All right, so. He says, Logan, Marshall Green, and Tom Hardy. Morgan Sispic. My roommate always does Kurt Russell and Jeff Bridges. I think Kurt Russell and David Keith are identical. My other roommate said Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. There we go. Madeline Deering, Channing Tatum, and Ryan Gosling. Mike Malloy. It's nuts how much these two are dead ringers. And he puts, who is it? Gary Renecki and Frederick Forrest. I know Frederick Forrest. The other guy looks familiar. I'd have to see a movie. Tracy Allen, Bill Paxton, Bill Pullman. Yeah, I know. Peter England, Keith David Keith. Gary Worley. I don't get them confused, but I always thought Patrick Swayze and Kurt Russell look alike. Maybe that's why Kurt got Tango and Cash, because they originally wanted Stallone and Swayze, but Patrick turned it down. Nathan Rumler. It took me a long time to realize DJ Qualls and John Hawkes were two different people. Felton Jackson, Kurt Russell, Patrick Swayze, Susan Root, that was just a Christmas thing. Kevin Keegan, Daniel Radcliffe, and Elijah Wood. Jamal Potter, Anthony Hopkins, and Julie Dench are somewhat. Tracy McFace, all the men in American Horror Story look alike. Kevin Michael Jones, Liv Tyler, and Evangelina Lilly. So, of course, Peter Jackson cast both. Jeremy R. Oh, boy, grab a chair. Corey Walter, Russell Crowe and Gerard Butler, Jerry Cortez, David Koechner, and Rod Cordy. I'd also add, like, James Gandolfini and Chris Bear, two other bald guys that look similar to me. Jimmy Dempster, here's a triple. Chris Holmes from Wasp, Mark Hamill, and Peter Dinklage. There we go. Michelle Pfeiffer, Stuart Townsend, when he tried to be the vampire Lasat in Queen of the Damned, and pretty much any model shot Nair Knightley takes with shorter hair. Jason Lindbergh, Alan Sheedy, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Aaron Mazzola. I can't think of any I confuse, but a lot of people say Bill Burr and Joey Pants. I don't think they look super alike, but they do sound very similar. Zach Puccinelli, Dylan McDermott, and Dermot Mulroney. Nick Mua. I hope you had a happy Christmas, sir, but my best to you and yours for the coming year. Because of the Phantom Menace, Carmen dating myself. I know. I confused Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley for some time. As for the dudes, McDermott and Mulroney look somewhat simpler and their names sound alike. What's in a name? ? Quite a bit, I would say. Lastly, Mrparka has a certain Tom Hardy vibe. We all know it's true. What? No. Questions. You said you love of a film came from watching movies with your parents or grandparents. Did they dislike TV, aka the idiot box? Is that why you don't like it? No, my parents didn't dislike TV. I just don't care for television anymore because when you're younger, the TV was always on. You just watch whatever they put on, you know. You didn't have every movie at your fingertips. And I just don't have time for TV. I don't have time to get invested in that stuff. And I like comedy shows still. I could probably watch a lot of those because, you know, it's not like a direct thing. But a lot of these shows go on for 7 seasons, and the last season just shits to bed, and people feel like they wasted 6 seasons worth. My parents watch television, though. 2, have you ever bought a film you disliked on DVD, Blu-ray solely because the extra features look good? I'm considering ordering Vestron's release of Candyman Day of the Dead. Yeah, sometimes. Or I've watched one and I was like, I wish this movie had good features so they could explain why this movie's such a mess. 3, would you ever watch a movie continuation of a TV show if said movie looked interesting? Or would you watch a couple episodes first to get up to speed? Wait, would you ever watch a movie continuation of a TV show? I might. Yeah, I probably would. I watched The House of Dark Shadows, and I watched the sequel, The House of Dark Shadows, that was like made after the TV show. So I would. Neil Machindo, he does Mulroney and McDermott. Travis Eddings, Charlie Sheen looks a lot like Balbazar Getty. So, you know what? I didn't plan a question of the week this week. I thought I'd come up with one going through all those. So I'll probably just post a little thing right here so you can answer when I come up with one. Because I am brain dead right now. We're going to hop into that update. All right, let's hop into this update. First up is the 4K of Inglorious Bastards. I heard this isn't a great looking 4K, but for the price, I decided to give it a chance. Love this movie. I haven't seen it in a while. You know, a lot of these epic long movies you watch a couple times when they come out and you don't get a chance to rewatch. But love this one. Remember digging it quite a bit when it came out. Next up is an order from DDD House. There's a few in here. This is In Between Loves. This looks kind of like a comedy, Hong Kong kind of flick. Looks like it has some slasher elements to it, but it's probably going to be more of a ghost story if I remember. I can't remember 100% what this one's about. So, yeah. Then up here we have the live-action version of Wicked City. I heard that this is really crazy. Based off the anime, which I need to watch both. I'll probably do a double feature of both of those. I'm really excited to do that when I get a chance. So, yeah. And we have up here Evil Instinct, I believe this one called. Yeah. This one didn't get too good of reviews, but I was ordering a couple and the price was really good on this one, so I ended up going with it. So, yeah. It's got the Cat 3 on there, so why not? Can't go wrong with Cat 3 for about $10. So then we have Hansel and Gretel. This is, I believe, the Korean horror film. I've not seen this one. I know there's a handful of movies called Hansel and Gretel. So, yeah, this is from Media Blaster's release, so... Then we have a couple of weird animes that my friend recommended. They were dirt cheap on the Right Stuff anime price. It was Blood Shadow, so this looks pretty off the wall. Yeah. And then we have Angel Blade. So, yeah, these look like they're like smut entertaining. I'm not 100%. They got little diamonds on their nipples there, so yeah, always that. To follow that up, we have the Maltese Falcon, which is great. You got to follow up porn anime with, or hentai, or whatever the hell you call it, with the Maltese Falcon. Keep it classy, right? Like this movie had to have it, so good price. Then we have the partner label stuff from Vinegar Syndrome. We have Savage Harvest by Eric Stanzi. I love this movie. Great SOV flick. One of the coolest ones. Always dug this one. Very excited to finally have this Blu-ray, nice edition and everything like that. It has new making of too. So if you guys haven't seen Savage Harvest, this is what a good SOV movie is supposed to look like. This and Shatter Dead, stuff like that, man. Great stuff. And we have Rebels of the Neon God. This looks pretty cool. This one I didn't know much about. I think I had seen the title a little bit, so I made sure I kind of watched like one of the trailers, and I was like, all right, that sounds like I can get behind it. I can dig it. So I ended up ordering that one. Then we have Detention, which is one that I actually had heard a little bit about, I think, just the title alone. Spooky ghost story, Asian style. I'm into these for sure. I believe it is a good, Ghost 4 monsters that take place. Yeah, sounds awesome. Sounds up my alley. I like the partner label stuff a lot. A lot of it's really good. Then we have Being Natural. This movie looked really bizarre, out there kind of film. So I'm into that kind of stuff. Whoa, that looks intense. Then we got one more of the partner label stuff. We have Arrabado, aka The Rupture, I believe, or Rapture, which is supposed to be a really pretty much very popular Spanish kind of horror film. And it's got the lead in here. The main guy in the front is actually on the slipcover was in, what was that movie? Cannibal Man, which is a really cool movie. So this looks awesome. Definitely going to check this one out when I get a chance. I know it's got some good reputation. So I'm going to get into some more of the Blu-rays here. We have the Scream Factory Collector's Edition of Vampire Lovers by Rory Ward Baker with Ingrid Pitt. Love this movie. I guess they're going to send a replacement disc out because there was one altered scene or something of nudity that's not right. Then we have Trog from 1970. So is Vampire Lovers also from 1970. This movie's ridiculous, but entertaining. Yeah, I laugh a lot during that one. And then we have No Way to Treat a Lady with Rod Steiger, Lee Remick, George Siegel. I heard this is an interesting one. I think Gary, what's Gary's last name? I can't believe I'm getting so old. Gary from Cinema Beefs mentioned this movie when he's on 22 Shots, and it sounded like totally up my alley, cross-dressing Rod Steiger. And then we have Time of the Wolf by Michael Haneke, and his movies are usually pretty freaking grueling, so I picked this one up. Don't know much about it. Sounded good, though. I like the stuff that I've seen him put out. Then we have Tower of Screaming Virgins. I picked this up because Rebecca McKendry mentioned this on her All the Colors of the Dark podcast, and I did not know about this one. So I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I ended up grabbing this. It looks like kind of a made-on-demand Blu-ray, but you can grab it on Amazon. Then we have some DVDs. I ended up picking up That Little Monster from 1994. I enjoyed this one enough to go ahead and seek out the Elite DVD, so I figured, why not? This is a really bizarre, goofy movie, as you can tell, with the mutant baby on there. And these next ones, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even know if I should show them because they're so weird. But I listened to this podcast, Sick on Cinema. A good podcast. You should check it out. And they cover some of the extreme stuff. And they were talking about this website called Collectibles, which kind of specializes in serial killer memorabilia, which is not my thing. I'm not a collector of that kind of stuff. But they were mentioning these movies. Anybody knows the case of this person? What was his name? Sawa? Anyways, he was famous because he was a student, I think in France, and he ended up murdering and eating this poor girl. And he got off on a technicality or something. I don't remember exactly the details of the case, but he came like this weird kind of like pop culture icon or some sorts, or weird kind of dark pop culture icon, and they made like a series of films with them in it, and it's just so bizarre. So these are kind of like, he's not actually making money from these, he's dead, or nobody is, but these are like these weird bootlegs that he ended up making that kind of follow him. I Want to Eat You, which I think is actually a film that's based on the true case. Let's see if I can cover this up. And these are the How Does It Feel and the Sagawa Olympics, which I don't know if I could show the back of a lot of this stuff. I can show you the back because there's nudity covered up there. But it's just such a bizarre thing, like where you're like, I don't know why this exists. And normally I wouldn't get Love Ritual. This one, I Want to Eat You, might be something different. It might be a documentary about him. I'm not 100% sure what these all. I think I Want to Eat You is the film version of it. But I just am kind of very confused that these even exist, and my curiosity got the best of me, and I had to see them, so that's why I ordered them. But yeah, you can still pick those up at the Cult Collectibles website and everything like that. They have a lot of stuff if you're interested in that stuff. It's just not my thing, but I am interested in the movies and everything like that. So yeah, let's hop back to the video. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.